The following is an original audio series from Sierra International Machinery, Pile of Scrap, with your host, John Sacco.
All right, so we've heard yesterday and a little bit today with the panel about operational costs that everybody who handles any form of recycled material will incur. And I really think it's important to dive a little deeper into this because as an operator, a facility owner ourselves in Bakersfield, California, we try to break down our costs as detailed as we can, but Jay here with his company in Alter, I think has taken it to another science. And so let's just get started. Let's just start with direct cost. And everybody seems to have a grasp of that, but let's talk about direct cost and how you bucket that at Alter.
So I think actually, there's been a lot of conversations and some great people up here talking, and as Brett said, every time you swing, every time you pick something, it costs you something. So when we talk about costs, in a direct cost versus your fixed cost, you've got some that's sunk money that's there. That's not going to change. It's going to be divided each month by the number of tons you do, and that is just there. The only thing you have control of is your variable operating cost. And those things you put in that bucket and how careful you are about metering everything from your electric and your water and your fuel and your labor and the bobcat for cleaning up and the loader for pushing up. Every bit of that is your direct cost. And a lot of times when you ask somebody, and historically, and I don't know anything else, scraps all I know absolutely nothing else. So I don't know whether it's gonna help any or confuse the shit out of you, or confuse the heck out of you. But it comes down to the fact that you can only control that variable aspect. Can you slow down the use of fuel? Can you make as few swings as you can? And those things are fixed into your cost at the machine. And when you ask somebody, what does it cost you to shred? Or what does it cost you to shear? You count the number of people. You count the crane that's directly feeding. You look at that piece of equipment. And that becomes the static part of what they say. But yet that whole yard around it, I don't know if you want me to just
keep going, because I think this is what important. I've talked to a lot of people here. Well, what's it cost to shear? Well, you have your operator, crane operator in the crane, but this is where it gets in. You still got a yard to maintain. Where are you putting those costs? Where are those going to what buckets? Because where do you allocate those expenses? Because I think people think they can buy for one price. They go, it only cost me $15 to process scrap. No, it doesn't. It costs you a lot more.
So the other aspect is the balance of the yard is going. If you look at it cost me so much to shear, and for those of you who have so much to shred, so much from my non-ferrous, I know my costs. But when you add those costs up and those total dollars at the end of the month, you seem to spend more than that in the yard. So you think you know what your shredding costs, you think you know what your but this general bucket, whether that's fences or stormwater or controls in the yard or your camera servers, or it could be a multitude of things. There is dollars it costs to run the balance of the facility, sweepers and radiation detectors, everything that ticks around that yard. And you take those dollars and you figure out, here's my operating cost for my shredder, what I believe is my direct. But here's a variable cost bucket that I control that affects every pound and every ton in the yard. And if you look at that, that has a dramatic effect of what your actual, real, fully absorbed operating cost is. That could be $10 a ton on top of it, that can be $15 a ton. That depending on how much you put in the actual bucket. And so we spend a lot of time figuring out exactly which people, how much time, is there some allocator? But it's tedious, it's time consuming, but it's absolutely critical to know what really costs to operate the piece of equipment.
You touch on something, repair and maintenance. Let's say you have a new material handler and you have a new shredder, new baler, new shear. Well, your year 1, year 2 repair and maintenance costs is going to be probably pretty minimal. But when you start pricing out the cost of operation, you better start forward thinking 4 or 5 years ahead, because that's when you're going to have major wear items. It doesn't matter what machine you own. If you own a shredder, you're going to change your hammers. If you own a shear, you're going to have to reline it. A 2-ram baler, you're going to eventually have to reline it. And those are pretty expensive items, and that's going to happen maybe year 4, year 5. So you're thinking you're in tall cotton, but if you're not putting any of that money, as we were talking at breakfast, how you want to put money away to pay for those expenses as you go down the road.
So you have known whether if it's a shear, you're going to pull across that and you're going to replate the whole thing. You're going to line everything. You're going to reline the inside of the hopper. You're going to do a couple cylinders. You know, every 5 years you're going to spend $250,000 on the shear and say, I have to do this to keep everything square, everything neat, everything functioning. But do you just wait and expense that in that year and say my operating cost this year is through the roof and I'm never going to make anything? Or do you say, I know that the operating costs, these are coming. These are predictable items. And when I look at my shearing, if I have an accrual, if I run my business that way, or at least if I know it actually is part of your cost. You may not allocate it every day, but in the back of your mind, if you know every so often this is the project I'm going to do. I can use the large motors in a shredder as an example. Every 10,000 hours, pull that motor out whether it needs or not. Before you run into a catastrophic failure, send it out, get it clean, bearing, tuned it, put it back on the shelf, run off the spare, and you know you've got 5 years of uninterrupted maintenance. But do you allocate for that, or do you just take that as a hit? So it's all that peripheral information, or all those things it takes to run the yard. The SG&A, everybody that's salary, general, and administrative, that has a cost that the operation has to cover. So you probably should have a good handle on what that is too on a per ton basis. Because in the end, what you see sometimes is folks will say, I know exactly what it costs me to run it. Except at the end of running it, we make a ton of money doing this, we make a ton of money doing this, but in the end we don't make any money. So do you really know what all those variable buckets are, where they land in your business?
Well, exactly. I did 2 sessions on maintenance, and I showed a lot of slides of machines that aren't very well taken care of, and those costs. Some operators don't feel, hey, I need to put money towards my daily, monthly maintenance, and it comes back to bite them in the butt because your downtime is going to be more. Another thing that you got to consider is having a few spare parts on your shelves at all time of wear items. It doesn't matter, be it material handler, because you may call for a part and your vendor may have it. But if you've taken notice of how FedEx is no longer overnight anymore and how UPS doesn't deliver overnight, there's always something happening. You could be down 3-4 days for a $50 fitting. You're losing a lot of revenue, a lot of profit in 3 days by waiting for a $50 fitting. So start thinking about the cost you can prevent by having a little bit up front in your warehouse to keep on. What do you carry, did you say, in spare parts at Alter?
About $40 million.
They're prepared. And look, you've got 70-something yards. How many yards you have?
Somewhere around 70, I don't lose track.
Yeah, but you don't lose track of that 40 million. So a lot of people here in this room, might have just 1 yard or 2 yards or 3 yards, but you know what? Start thinking about what will happen. And I'll tell you what, I've never seen a grapple not blow a hose. I mean, it happens monthly, it seems, at Sierra in our facility. So think about those items that you want to have on your shelf. All right, I live in California, and we touched on it earlier on shredders and the environmental issues. I think environmental costs are far greater than what most people are planning for. And stormwater is an example. And if you're not doing anything as far as stormwater goes right now, you're going to get caught. Okay? There are people, we got a letter from a third-party NGO, non-government organization, says, well, your stormwater remittance every year, we're missing X, Y, and Z. Cost us $16,800 for the settlement, plus the attorney fees of $15,000, plus the consultant's fees of $12,000, and we thought we were pretty damn good. You will get caught if you're not doing anything about your stormwater and your runoff. And we get 5.8 inches of rain a year in Bakersfield. Some of you get that in an hour. So what do you do at Alter when it comes to your environmental and putting cost and how you're, how do you view it?
So again, I think that's the carrying cost of the yard. That's the cost of doing business today, and it doesn't matter if you're a single small yard. I grew up, my family still operates a little small yard in Massachusetts, and that was where I was raised and what I know best. And I don't care how big or small or how many yards you have. It's housekeeping. It's how are you maintaining the property? When somebody walks in, what do they see? Somebody knows nothing about our industry. Someone once told me, pretend your dentist was coming to visit you at the yard and walk through. And it's kind of a weird concept, but what do people's eyes go to? There's something that's out of place. There's something that looks like a pile of crap. But it is the way you project the yard. Is it neat? Is it orderly? Is it clean? Do you know where your stormwater runoff is? I think that all of those costs, whether you have a completely capped yard or you have a completely dirt yard, it doesn't matter. It's how you maintain what you have. I think you should always be continuously improving and trying to find ways to better monitor, minimize any off-site discharges, and we have to operate in the best interest of the environment that we can, because we're always a target, and we want less on your back. We think all those costs just fall into the carrying costs for the business. So if you think that all happens out of the air, well, my shredder shouldn't get charged that. You can't run without it. So those costs are all costs borne by the business. They're not direct at the shredder, but they are part of the overhead that those operations have to carry.
We have an image problem with our industry. Some people want to call us junk dealers. Some of us want to call recycling facilities. That sounds great. Scrap metal. And what happens here is, what are you projecting in your community? What are you projecting to the regulator from OSHA, from EPA? Look, this current administration, this is not a political statement, this is reality, funded the EPA $500 billion. You're going to get visited by the EPA or the Department of Toxic Substance Control. It's coming. So what do you project when that regulator walks into your facility? What's it look like? If it looks like a mess, a junkyard, get your checkbook out. If they walk in and see an orderly facility, and see, this is part of the cost, what Jay's been talking about. What you project, what's your cost, get a guy out there with a broom. Clean up that oil spill. Everybody's gonna have an oil spill. Some hose is going to break on some machine. Are you cleaning it up right away, or are you just leaving it go? And then it rains, and now you got the stream of oily water heading to your gutter. These are costs that have to go into your operation. And even at Sierra, we spent $750,000 on our stormwater for 5.8 inches of rain, and I still got dinged. Okay? If you haven't had it happen, it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And how many people at Alter, for instance, in all your yard, how many people you got just doing environmental? You don't have to give me
It's everyone's responsibility.
That's great.
I thought that was a good one. Now, and I believe that. I think every guy that walks through that yard ought to be picking up whatever you can, making sure you tell us where we got it. We've got a bunch of professional environmental people, because we have that luxury because of our scale. We have to. We're constantly chasing battles. We're constantly doing infrastructure improvements. But that's just us. I am telling you, everybody has an obligation to make sure you're keeping, look with a different eye. Walk through your facility and say, what can I do to address it? It doesn't matter. The water goes someplace. Take a couple blocks, hang a couple booms. It's a low cost to say, I have a visible, when you walk through, you'll see there's a visible means to stop a sheet flow coming out of this yard. Doesn't mean it's going to be 100% effective, but anybody that sees that stream of water says there is a physical solution there. And we have to show that we're doing the best effort we can, no matter where we're at. Not all are the same. There's completely different. We have yards that are completely dirt. We have yards that are majority hard surface. I'm not sure which is the right answer, to be honest with you. But I believe that that's all part of the cost of doing business. I do, John, I'm going to take 1 second.
Sure.
There was a bunch of conversations about all the terrible things that are coming in the environmental world today, and all the regulation. It is coming. There's going to be environmental pressure. There's always been environmental pressure, and whether it's shredders or shears or your yard or your trucks, that's always going to be part of our world. And how we respond is up to us to make the most sense of it, to educate them, to sit down and talk, to bring them in and understand who we are, and that knowledge of what we are, I do believe that shredders are going to shred, that shears are not going to replace shredders. They're an absolutely critical part of our infrastructure and our steel making, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I do believe we're here, and I believe that the scrap industry and the professionals will target and find solutions that are acceptable in order to maintain the recycling. We are the recyclers. When everybody wants closed loop recycling, we in this room are the heart of recycling in the United States.
So Brett Eckhart said something today, and Jay and I talked about it this morning. We looked at each other when Brett brought it up. A lot of people have these, 50 acres, 20 acres of land in rural America. And there's a bad habit of saying, yeah, put it over there. Yeah, I'll put it over there. Two things are happening. The cost of bringing that material to your processing center, every time you handle it, it's more than $5 now. I mean, Brett, $5. No offense, brother, but I think it's $7.50 to $10 now, right? But here's two things that happen. When you got to bring scrap that's an acre away, bring it to your processing, be it a shredder, be it a shear, be it a baler, logger, whatever the hell it is, it's going to cost you extra money. But here's what you're also doing. You're spreading the potential for the regulator to go test your dirt all the way over there, because you might buy it in a piece of equipment and it has a little oil tank in it, and there's a little hole in it, and it's just dripping straight into the ground. And now they're going to come in, they're going to take soil samples at the 20th acre and over here, and they're going to say, well, guess what? You're going to have to take out a foot of dirt, and now you're facing a $500,000, $1 million cleanup. So what'd you call it, the sprawl?
Scrapyard sprawl. Feeds out to every corner as far as it can find.
So you want to pay attention to that, because I think that's a cost. It doesn't look like a cost, but it's there. And I think space is a great thing, because some people operate their yards on postage stamps, and it's amazing what they'll pump out because they have nowhere to put it. They gotta tons in, tons out, pounds in, pounds out. So they're really working it. But those sprawl can come back and bite you, and that's just something to keep in mind. You touched on sweeping. And, of course, if you have a dirt yard, you can't sweep. At Sierra, we're all paved and all concrete. But because of the stormwater situation, we had to spend $250,000 on a sweeper. We were going to buy one anyway. We were pricing it out when we got this letter from these people. So part of our settlement is we have to sweep our facility, which is fine, a vacuum sweeper. Look, we want to be good neighbors to the people around us. So, that's a cost. Where do you put that into? Does that go to non-ferrous? Does that go to ferrous? Paper, wherever you're processing, so keeping your yard clean. So one thing you'll find out if you have an old paved yard is at the end of the pile, at the bottom of the pile is all this dirt. You bought all that dirt. Have you figured out what percentage, your shrinkage, we talked on that, Jay. What do you know what the percentage, what do you use for a percentage number?
I think it's all commodity specific, but the idea is that you have to manage that. If you start with flat ground, and you said you can't sweep a dirt yard, I actually don't believe that's true. You may sweep it differently. You sweep it with a magnet, you go over with a blade, but those roadways have to be maintained because that is your control. You do have to present that control no matter whether it's on a dirt yard or so there's a different way to do it, but again, each yard is specific. Each yard has its own, my new thing, I just looking at Brett, I'm going to hire him because, I'm going to give him a 20% margin, and I'm going to hire him for $6 a ton to move my scrap from now on, because I think it's $10 every time you touch it today. But, with hydraulic oil at $15 a gallon and fuel where it is, there is nothing cheap about running a machine. But I think cleanliness is about what the eye sees and about where the customer is going to drive. I have three basic parameters: safety, quality, and customer service. Whatever you do, you have to do it safely. Your quality has to be impeccable, as you heard from everyone today, and yesterday, non-ferrous, ferrous. As markets change, as people build relationships, as you go year after year, quality matters, and customer service. Your customer has to know when there's an issue, that issue is important to you, and you're there for them. And when they walk your yard, and they see that you take care of your yard and your facility and your equipment, and the signs are where they belong, and all those things that we have to do now to show OSHA's right, it seems like it's a waste of time, but it's a necessary cost of doing business in our industry today. We are manufacturers. We are not scrap yards, we're not junk yards, we're in the manufacturing business. We have incredibly expensive equipment. It requires an infinite amount of maintenance and reinvestment, over time. And guys, I'm sitting here talking to you like I know something. I grew up in a scrap yard. I never got to go to college. I got here because I spent my time in the yard making sure I didn't make mistakes. And there's no silver bullet that's going to tell you how to run your business. It's going to be different. But it's little incremental improvements. You walk through, you see something. You make a little change, and it's a number of little changes, those incremental improvements that continue to make you better, safer, cleaner, more efficient, and faster, which makes you safer in today's environment, both regulatory and from a safety and health to our employees.
Going to safety here for a second, because earlier today on the stage, the panel was talking about hiring, and we all know that hiring people is very difficult. Well, some of you have customers that require your company to have drug testing. We do oil field demolition. So Chevron, everybody pretty much knows who Chevron is. Well, Chevron demands that Sierra has an ongoing drug testing program, a random test, screening, respirator fitting. What it cost us to put a brand new employee in our yard or in the field, we figured it out, it was about $8,500 at a minimum to put an employee, to train them, test them, fit them for all the proper PPE. And drug testing, in my maintenance seminars that I did today and yesterday, we're dealing with multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment, equipment that's worth $800,000, $900,000, $500,000. Would you let somebody drive your $500,000 Ferrari loaded, drunk, stoned? The answer is obviously no. But are you letting them operate your equipment in your yard? Tell us about what you do and what you've experienced with this.
So I think it's a really slippery slope of the world we're in today. As legalization comes state to state, or whether it's medical marijuana provided or legal, fully recreational, what you do in your own time is supposed to be on your own until there's an accident or problem. So it's alcohol, you can drink all you want, at night, there's nothing other than unless you look impaired. And so I think that there's some personal responsibility that people have to take. I think as operators and owners of businesses, we have to protect our people if we have any suspicion. I think it's just going to be really complicated until the laws actually find out how are you going to meander through this. I don't have a good answer. We continue to do the best we can to prevent any input, any invasion of substance abuse within our team. We do training. We try and make sure we post-accident, we test everybody. But it's the world we live in has just shifted. So again, we adapt. It's what we do. I wish I could tell you there was a good answer for that, and I think the time is going to be, there was a point in time in a previous life where a crane operator in a steel wheel that reported up through me had gotten bopped on a random test. Well, he was picking up a 60-ton ladle of molten metal. And it's like, no, he's not going up. The union he's got a legal medical card. It's like, I don't care. All the guys underneath him are in jeopardy while he's sitting in that crane. I don't care if it's legal or not. I'm not letting him in the crane. It's so we're going to go on strike. It's like, go on strike, because I'm sticking up for the guys that are underneath that ladle. And I don't care what you do. And as long as you'll be responsible for any accident or anybody that killed, that's one thing. But he's not doing it on my watch. And in the end, we backed down. We made friends. Everybody was okay, and he didn't get back in that crane. But that's the responsibility. You got to know, and you got to be not afraid to take it head on when you are up against something.
Yeah, it's difficult enough to find employees, as they were saying on the panel earlier. Look, obviously working in a metals recycling facility is not the sexiest thing on earth, but there's tremendously good paying jobs in our industry, and we can attract people, but it's retaining those people. And in one part, our facility in Georgia, 3 out of every 10 people don't pass their screening. They say they can, but they can't. And so it's a challenge. And so you gotta, it's back to cost, because sometimes you gotta ask yourself, you got a good employee, he's faithful, he wants another $1 an hour. And you don't want to pay that $1 an hour or $2 an hour. You let him go. Now you got to replace that guy. What's that going to cost you? So these are costs that just you can't put a finger on day one, but they will affect your business. They will affect your operation. And these are the things. Somebody was saying earlier on the panel, hey, it's all about the buy. It's all about the buy. If you're buying right, you can make money in this industry. But if you don't know your cost, how do you know what to buy at?
So, again, I was a lousy student, and I spent all my time in the yard. I was much happier in a crane or a shear or behind a torch than I was anything else. But as I went through and moved through the different industry businesses that I worked for, I learned a lot about what makes that tick. And I figured out right off the bat, I'm a bad finance guy, but I love having a really sharp finance person by my side. I think it's incredibly important, whether you know it or not, to have somebody you look at. And I had a young man who was by my side, and I'd make some kind of bold statement, and I'd look over and he'd be like, and I would have swore on a stack of Bibles I was right. But he took the time to do the numbers, and it made me a believer in getting someone that can crunch those numbers and say, here's what I think this is. Let's peel back that onion, every little dollar. And let's see at the end, take a month. We've looked at every single dollar we spent. We know what we think we did for tons and for pounds. How the hell, where is all this extra? We weren't accounting for it. And it's enlightening to do. It's a tedious exercise, but I think it's really important to have a good, solid business partner. And I think someone that has the financial skills to be able to really look at those things and help give you good information on what do the numbers really say versus what my heart and gut tell me.
Jay has a saying, and a lot of people use it in different variations, but you can't change what you can't measure. So if you're not measuring the cost to whatever it is you're trying to manage, it's going to be tough to manage that situation.
And I'll ask folks a lot of times, what does it cost? And they'll be like, so-and-so. It's like, show me, send it to me. Because I don't want, we started with this and we did this and this, so therefore there's this odd little bucket of leftover, so we just tossed it in there. That's what I want to know. That's the one that you may not understand, maybe low control, maybe missing an opportunity for. And every bit of it's just knowledge. It just lets you look at your business and your practices and find out something you thought you were doing that was so good really wasn't quite what you thought it was. And you got to pull back your conventional thinking and just take a shot and look at raw data and say, what does this tell me?
So I think that, to finish up here on this cost thing is, if it's on the buy where you make your money and you don't know what it costs you, you just don't know what to buy at. So, these are, I think, valuable lessons. And look, I've known Jay for a lot of years. I mean, your history starting off with a high temp alloy at Sussman Blumenthal there in Connecticut, Hartford, to your years at Schnitzer, publicly traded company, to now your years at running one of the largest, most successful family businesses here at Alter. This gentleman right here to my left knows what he's talking about, and take that to heart. So one of the things, I want to shift gears out of cost and talk about going to image and a narrative in our industry it's costing us from policymaker standpoint. And I don't use the word, even though in my podcast I got pile of scrap, I'm just trying to figure out if I change it. I don't use the word scrap because in California the word scrap is a very negative word. I always say recycled iron, recycled copper, recycled aluminum. So Jay's working with me. Sierra, we're producing a docu-series called Repurposed. And Jay wanted to be part of it because there was a narrative that he too felt like needs to change. And it's going to take everybody in our industry to help. Not just, this docu-series might change some minds, but it takes everybody. Jay, tell us a little bit about why you wanted to be involved in this docu-series and how it relates to everybody in this room.
So, one night over a cocktail and a cigar, we were chatting, and we've got an image problem, we've got a communication problem. We talk about the enforcement action or the cities coming in, whether it stemmed from the catalytic converters or air emissions or stormwater issues or now PFAS coming in. We're constantly going to have them. But what we don't tell, and you hear all this thing about recycling, and you look on and everybody's talking about aluminum cans and something. We recycle is such an important, our role, and when it came down through the pandemic, and we all of a sudden became an essential business. And it kind of became clear, we've always been essential. The entire steel industry of the United States relies on us for feedstock. The EAFs don't run without scrap. The aluminum foundries don't produce aluminum. We produce copper and stainless. And, this industry, we are so integral to the infrastructure in this country, yet we were never recognized because it's what we did. I'm a kid from the junkyard. I grew up in a junkyard, and I realize I'm not allowed to say that. But it's who I think. But it's what I do. Get up in the morning, I make scrap. We make big things into little things, and we ship them out, and we do it the next day, and we do it every day, and we keep our head down and we charge ahead. But we haven't told the communities and the regulators and the steel mills and the employment people and the enforcement, you need us way more than you think you do. And here's why. You hear about closed loop recycling. And when John and I were talking, it's like, well, we have like one of the best little closed loop scenarios in Iowa. We've got a scrapyard with a shredder, and 30 minutes away, we got SSAB, massive EAF. It leaves, it goes into the shredder, comes out of the shredder, goes into the truck, goes to the steel mill, goes into the pot, comes out as new steel, all within about a day or two. Maybe if they're really busy, maybe 2-week cycle. It's a complete, and then it goes back, it makes hard plate, goes back into making new balers, or new bridges, or new everything. It is a complete full circle, closed loop recycling system. And it just got us kind of talking and charged up, and then.
So here's something that our industry used to say. The scrap recycling industry recycles 72 million tons a year. I mean, what the hell does that mean? We were focusing on the inputs. We have to focus now on the outputs. And let me give you an example of the policymakers who don't know. These are two true stories. A senator from California a few years ago, we were doing a fundraiser for her, and she goes, well, what is made from recycled metal? She had no idea. And we're like, and then we start launching into everything. 3 weeks ago, this is not political, this is just what could happen in reality. My congressman from Bakersfield, California is the minority leader. Some of you don't want the Republicans to win, some of you want the Republicans to win. I could care less what you want. But if the Republicans win the House, he becomes the Speaker of the House. And talking to him, he asked me this question. Well, what's the most recycled item in our daily lives? I go, how about the steel on your car? How about the lights in this building that we're in now have 30% recycled copper content? How about every foundation to every highway, hospital, airport, school that has rebar in it comes from 100% recycled iron? Well, it's like pressing a button. The bottom line is, guys, we got to start educating these people that without our industry, nothing in this country gets made.
I want to interrupt you for 1 second on something completely different. The young man that's walking out that's been doing the torching, dude, you're my hero. Everybody else is here. He's been standing over that torch for 2 days, and I don't care who in your yard. Those guys behind the torch are working every day.
On,
they get my respect. So, thanks, dude.
So, I'm going to segue in here. Brett, you mic'd up? Andrew, did you get him a mic? Brett, come on up here. You guys know this gentleman right here, Mr. Brett Eckhart. He is a incredible young man who is really kicking ass in this industry. Hello, buddy. Come sit down. Come join us up here. So, why am I having Brett up here? Brett and I, we go way back. You go back even further with Brett. So
I just hired him for $6 a ton, so I don't care what you do from here.
So Brett, you and Jay known each other for when he was a little guy. When you were with Schnitzer, Tell us that story because it's a good one.
Brett used to come and spend some time with us. We did a big shindig around the drag races, and he and his buddies, when they were in school, would come over and hang out for a weekend. And his folks and us, we just had so much history and time together, and just watching him grow, watch that business become what it is today. It's pretty darn impressive.
So, one of the things, these are some great, it's storytelling time because these are some funny ass stories. Brett, tell us the story about when you didn't please your father and what he did to your car. Give us that rundown. This is a good one.
So my dad was a pretty tough guy, but a really good guy. Still is. We have probably as good a relationship now as we've ever had, now that we don't have to work together. When you get two bullheaded people in the room, it tends to be a lot of arguments and conflicting ideas. But growing up, I've always had a problem with people telling me what to do. It's always stuck in my craw. And even as a kid, so I was a little bit of a troublemaker, I guess you could say. So my dad, growing up, I grew up in a scrapyard. We had a 1986 Pontiac Firebird come in as scrap, and I was like, dude, that's a sweet car. He goes, okay, and I wasn't old enough to drive yet, and he goes, you want that car? And I was like, yeah. He goes, well, then you can fix it up, get it ready, so when you turn 15, you can drive in 15, you can have that car. So we set it in the corner, and if I made some money, I could go buy something to kind of get a part here, part there, and get it ready so when I turned 15, I could drive. Well, because I was kind of a little asshole, I was getting in trouble, and my dad said, you screw up one more time, I'm gonna crush that car. And we had an old like kind of homemade car crusher at the time, and I was like, yeah, whatever, like it's my car, I bought it. He goes, I don't give a fuck if it's your car or not, like we're gonna crush the car. And I said, okay. So I screwed up again, got in trouble. I actually got caught smoking pot at 14, which was not good. And he took the loader over, got the car, and he said, come on, let me show you something. And I said, all right. I was at the yard one day, he picked the car up, and meanwhile, I probably had like $1,000 in this car and parts and a crap load of time, and he goes, watch this. He took it right over to the crusher, he put it in there, and he goes, and we had the old manual style with the handles, you actually had to pull the handles, and he goes, now you pull the handles. I said, pull the handles on my own car? He goes, pull the fucking handles. And I said, okay, sir, I'll pull the handles. I walked over there, smashed my own car. And it was a sweet car, man. One of these days I'm gonna buy me an 86. I'm just gonna roll into like the family reunion.
If you were thinking, you would have logged it, and then you'd at least have a coffee table.
All right, Jay, here's a story about 15 and your front end loading your grandpa in the yard. You gotta tell us the story. I'm sorry, this is fun.
This again is usually a couple of cocktails and a cigar story, but so growing up, we did probably 300 cars a day, and it was a little small. The yard is no different now. It's still about 7 to 9 acres. It was a total mud hole. It's still pretty much a mud hole. But we had one of these Aljon hydrostatic loaders, and when you're doing 300 cars a day and you're trying to get motors and trannies out of them, tires off, get them crushed, get them on a trailer, it was like a zoo. And I spent my whole youth, inside a loader. So I'm zipping around, I'm stacking the cars, and they're 6 high, and I'm running over, and I go to back up, and I look over my shoulder, and my grandfather, who's in at this point, his early 90s, is laying there in the mud with the bushel basket he used to walk up and down the yard with, laying upside down in the mud. And it's like, shit. Sadie, what happened? He stands it up, and he looks at me, and he goes, you ran over me, you little fucker. And it's like, so, he didn't speak to me for 6 months, but he walked that yard every day for my entire youth, and he was there until he was just over 100 years old, and he fell and broke a hip and died just over 100 cleaning battery cables in his basement at night. But so,
that's a hardcore scrap dude right there, man.
Didn't speak much English, but he had a mean right hand with a sledgehammer.
So the three of us all grew up in family businesses, and Brett, you were saying yesterday you graduated on a Saturday, you were work on a Monday. I graduated on a Thursday, and I got the next week off and started on a Monday, so I think I had 10 days off. You
I
got
was a shit student. I didn't graduate any place.
Yeah, but
I
you
just went to the yard.
You were forced labor, child labor. I think when you finished pooping your diapers, your dad made you get out in the yard.
I didn't know anything else, and it served me well, and it's been a great ride. So,
Well, yeah, fun story. So, Brett is also, Brett, you and I, we both have podcasts. Mine's Pile of Scrap, yours is Scrap Life. But Brett is on the forefront on this journey of changing the image of our industry. Jay working with me on the Repurposed. Brett, when did the light bulb, what is it that set you to say, you know what, the message has to get out there about hard work, what we do, and how it's important to our daily lives?
We live in America. I wear my American flag hat, my shirt. I don't care what side of the aisle you live on or care about. If you live in America, you got a chance. You got more opportunities staring you in the face every single day than 80% of the world can even shake a stick at. And it's there for the taking if you just fucking do the work. And so I've just been a big proponent of just do the work. I want to be the guy that stays up the latest and gets up the earliest, whether I'm drinking at the bar or going to work. I want to be the last guy there. When we had the piano bar yesterday, we stayed until the piano stopped playing. And then we went home. And then we got up. And then we went to work. That's the only way. I don't know any other way.
But you take it to social media to tell this story, but why is that important to tell the story to you?
Because I think that the younger generation needs to hear it, that the world's in your fingertips. If you just go out and do it. There's never been, people talk a lot of shit about the generation below us, below me, below you guys, and they say, oh, these guys aren't motivated, they're not this or they're not that. But I think they just need someone to tell them how lucky they are. And tell them what can actually be accomplished if you just show up and do the work. And put in 15, 16 hours a day and do it. And do it for 10 years, not for 2 months. And I think that do it for 80 like Jay has. Whatever that is. But but you didn't get where you got because you were afraid to put in the work. It's not about an education. It's about getting the knowledge by putting in the hours.
So 2 things. First, I got where I got because fear of failure and having to go back to my father who's 87 and still going to the yard every day was just the driver behind it. That was the whole side. So I don't know anything but get in the morning, go to work and hurry up, and somebody's chasing you, and if you don't go fast, somebody's biting at your behind. But I wanted to touch on something when you said about education, about the opportunity. I speak regularly at one of the colleges in St. Louis to classes that are graduating for the first in their families to get a college degree. And I said, you don't have to get a college degree to do anything you want. I didn't get one. I was fortunate. I was given opportunities, but there was nothing. I would chase it down and chase and run. And as Brett said, it's about being motivated to do something different. But you can do anything in this industry, and you can go anywhere and be anything, and you just have to have the intellectual curiosity to say, I'm not done digging. I'm gonna go a little farther. Show me how the machine runs. Tell me what it can do. Think about where I can go. What else can I do here? It's such a great industry for opportunity for future, but we have to tell the story. To circle back, whether it's Repurpose or the podcast, I'm doing here, I've been ducking both of them for this podcast for, 2 years. But here we are. But the idea is we have to get the message out. Local communities, to our stores, to the kids, bring them in, teach them that we are the recycler. We are the face of recycling in the United States, and we are critical to the infrastructure, whether you're building a bridge in your neighborhood or fixing roads or pouring a new building. All of that steel, or the majority of it, started from a scrap pile someplace. It started from our hands in our yards, somewhere along this really mature, complicated system that we call the U.S. recycling system. And we are right in the midst of it. And it's fascinating, and it's fun, and it's educational, and it changes. You look at the great vendors that showed up and the program that Jim and the folks here put together. It's who we are. And I think that story has to get out, and we can get some of that passion in the community. Legislators can fight a lot of things. but you can't fight the truth about what we do in our industry and the incredible importance of what we do every day.
I think, we got to clean it up a little bit. And don't be afraid, don't hide anymore. Brett, you haven't hid, you're out there, how many posts a week you're making, but your yard, processing iron, your hauling business, your steel, the tubing, the name's slipping me, what part of your pipe business, it's all part of what we do, and we hid for a lot of years in this industry. Ooh, don't say anything. Oh, well, it's coming back to bite us in the ass now. But if we get out there and educate people that it's our industry supplying all the raw materials to make the things in our daily lives, like we talked about the hospitals and schools, how about your appliances, the lights in your house? There's so many little items that have recycled metal. How about a hospital room? And you start telling people, educating people that, the stainless in an operating room, all the electronics, all the copper that's needed there, all the tools with the nickel in it, doesn't happen without our industry. So we have to start telling people about our story. So it goes me back to, you guys are hard workers. You were telling me a story last night, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to repeat this, about spending the night in the scrapyard because you worked underneath some loader all night? Shit. I'm sorry, Jay. It's gonna come back to haunt you.
Okay.
You're a worker.
Damn cocktails and cigars again. So my dad, we, as I said, tons of cars. We operated a fleet of 3-car carriers, and my father was an avid Detroit diesel fan, still is to this day. Believes every motor that isn't screaming, drive it like you're mad at it, put your foot down, hold it there as screaming as loud as it can, it's better. If it's puking oil, that's how much happier. So had one die, and when you couldn't do something, and it took me a long time to find out that this was a wrong answer until my wife came along. When something was really dangerous or really hard or really bad, he was like, son, this is too dangerous for the guys, you have to do it. And so I just did it. My wife comes along, it's like, do you realize the flawed thinking there? It's not safe for somebody else, but you're one of my disposable children, so you go do it. So that's where I get my safety bent from, but he left me there, motor had blown up, 671 Detroit. He says, look, you don't get to come home. Here's a sandwich. Pull the head, put the pistons in this thing, have it running in the morning because we need to go. We are really busy. Call me if you get finished. So it was all going perfectly well, and then I slid under the truck and kicked the jack. And this thing just settled down just enough to lay on top of my chest. Didn't kill me, but now I'm pinned under the truck. So it's like, shit. First, you got to think about he's going to come in. He's old school, mean as hell. It's like, and he's going to be pissed that I'm not done. But I can't reach anything, and I'm kind of stuck. So first thing in the morning, the mechanic comes in who'd been the yard mechanic for a while, and he thinks it's funny I'm pinner, so he takes my boots off and is tickling my boots and putting water on my feet. So what happens then? And he's like, we're just going to leave you there till your father gets here. And so, but that was a typical day. But if it wasn't running in the morning, my dad is that old school that it kind of drives this industry. If it's broken, go figure out how to fix it. Well, you can't get parts, make your own. There was numerous times he didn't believe, big stickers all over, do not open no serviceable parts. That doesn't mean you. Open it and fix it. and to this day, my guys will tell you that's a common thing. It's like, don't tell me it's broken and you can't find it, just tell me what you're gonna do to fix it, get around it. There's always a way to get something done, but that is just one of many cocktail and cigar stories.
All right, Brett, you love coaching, and I love coaching too. Now, you got 2 boys. Do you want them to join you in the business, or what do you want from them?
I want them if they want to be here. If they don't, I don't care. I can sell it. I'll sell it off. Call Jay. Hey, I got a few yards. You like buying yards?
We did that once already.
yeah, you did. We've had this conversation before. But no, I got 2. I got a 12-year-old and I got a 9-year-old boy, and I love them kids to death. I got the best wife ever. I mean, she's the only reason I can even sit here today, because she's taking care of the kids, and she's a full-time school teacher, teaching. I mean, she's amazing. So her and I've had this conversation more than one time, and I've just said, hey, I'm not ever going to pressure them to come into the business because I want them to go do what they want to do. I always knew what I was going to do. There was never a doubt in my mind. I knew I was going to go play football, be done. I knew exactly what I was going to do. It never crossed my mind. I mean, shit, even at spring break in college, I went to Schnitzer for my spring break and learned more about the scrap business. Like, that's what I did. I knew what I was going to do. I hope they find that thing. And if it's scrap, then let's go. But you better be prepared to fucking be the guy popping the gate, and you better be prepared to be the guy closing the gate. And that's the only thing I care about.
So for me, it was a little different. I always knew I was going to work for my father because my father, he was an Italian immigrant, and to an Italian man, his sons are going to be in the business. It's not even, you don't have a choice in life. So, all right, so I knew when I went to college, I was going to work for Dad. So I did when I graduated. But we had an agri-packaging side of our business, and that's where I was. We had the scrap yard. I had no passion for it. And we used to sell bagging and ties to the cotton industry. I liked that. And so I was doing pretty good at that. But my dad came to me and he was piddling around with these balers. And his partner said, hey, I want out. So my dad says, hey, why don't we sell the agri-packaging side of our business and you can go to work on the equipment side. I go, well, let me give that some thought. So unbeknownst to me, my dad's negotiating the sell, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to go buy a McDonald's. That's what I wanted to do in 1985. So I have my application out. They're going to go to Hamburger University. So my dad walks in. I had finished the application. I had my deposit check to send in that you had to send in to McDonald's. Sticks his head over the cubicle, looks at me. Here's a guy who didn't go to finish high school, didn't know anything about a university. He has these brochures in his hands. He goes, hey, what'd you take at SC? Marketing? I go, yeah. He goes, well, market these machines. There went my McDonald's dream. It's a true story. So all these years later, now I have two kids. I have one 23 and one 20. He goes to Texas Christian, TCU in Fort Worth, and my daughter graduated a year ago in May from USC. So she went to work for Oracle, and this is about a parent. What do you want for your kids? You just want your kids to be happy, chase their dreams like you want your kids. And I want to tell the story because I think it's important to make sure you follow your dreams. If your dream is to be here today and your dream is to be in this industry, God bless you, go for it. So my daughter hated working for Oracle. She just was miserable. And she wanted out. She said, Dad, I want to go to work in the sports industry. My daughter's this pretty little blonde, but the biggest freako football and baseball fan you have ever met. So she did it on her own, and so she got a job with Fox Sports and Highlights. Now, you're not a full-time employee at Fox, but she was happy again, calling me again, texting, Dad, how you doing? I'm like, my daughter's back. 8 weeks later, she got promoted to work at Fox NFL. And last Sunday, she's producing the pregame show on Fox NFL, and there I am watching the pregame show, and there's my daughter standing right behind Terry Bradshaw, Kurt Menefee, and Howie Long. And I'm like, and she sent me a text not long after. I go, Dad, I can't believe I'm living my dream. So I think that's the point here. We all have kids, and you left the family business, but you stayed in the business. And we have next generation coming up. If it's their dream to work with your pops or mom, great. If it's not, I think let them go do what they want to do. 100%. Jay?
Look, you either got the passion for this business or you don't, and I think that the kids are great now, and you got to find what makes you tick. And I love this business. I love the industry. I love the innovation. I love the opportunity. I think it's incredibly essential. You'll find a scrapyard, and what I tell when we start is, in every town, in every city, everywhere you go, you can pick up the phone book, or now you click online. You used to pick up the phone book, and there's a scrapyard there. And I used to go purposely and go find them all, and it literally is everywhere. Different size, different scale, but you always have that community out there, and I think it's great people. They love to help and connect and work with one another and teach each other, and we learn together, and we're protecting our environment, and we're protecting the world we live in, and we're generating materials to build on and build the rest of the world around us. And I just think it's fascinating to those that get involved and who get that hunger and get that bite of it. You can't get it out. You can't shed it, and it becomes part of who you are. So I love the business. I love everybody being here, and thanks.
Well, thanks for sponsoring this. And Jay, I share this with you guys. Why Alter sponsored this show was they wanted people from the smaller operators to be able to afford to come to a show, to come see, network, see equipment, talk to people, and hear people talk about the industry. He is passionate about the industry, and we really appreciate that. One last question for you, Brett. All right, instead of buying that fancy car, you bought the tire shredder.
Yeah.
So one day when you
Bought two.
Yeah.
I'm that guy.
All right, one day you're going to buy that
It's
car.
better.
What is that car you're going to buy? Well, one day. Come on
I'm
now.
gonna buy a Lamborghini,
Yeah.
but I'll be fucking too old to drive it probably. Because I'll probably find another piece of equipment that like looks cooler, But someday it'll happen. But I don't even want to buy one because it'll ruin it. Like I grew up, Jose Canseco had a Lamborghini, right? It's the only reason I was an Oakland A's fan. Like I like Jose Canseco, and so he had a cool Lamborghini. I was like, someday I'm gonna buy me one of them Lamborghinis. But I just keep buying expensive ass scrap equipment.
Well, listen, both of you, Jay, again, thank you, Alter Trading, and all the Alter people for sponsoring this event. It's been an amazing event. 2 days, it's gone by super fast. Brett, thanks for coming up, participating, and doing what you do for the industry and the voice and getting the message out. And that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
This has been a Sierra International Machinery original audio series. Thanks for listening. Please share this podcast and make sure to subscribe.